So we're about to start this lovely workshop on building a brand, how you can, do a Jamal Edwards and be really successful online. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our panel host, Charlotte. Can you give a round of applause, please?
Thanks, everyone. I'm really excited about this session. This session is all about you guys and how you can make the most of yourselves and build up your own personal brand. We've got some excellent speakers here today. We've got Paul Davies, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Microsoft. He's got over 20 years experience in marketing and works with loads of young people today in and throughout Microsoft, so really excited to have him with us. We've got Alex Stedman, also known as the Frugality. Alex has got a history in fashion writing. She still works as a freelance fashion writer, but also she's built up a successful blog herself. She's got over 64,000 followers on Instagram and is an expert in building her own personal brand. And we've got Hannah Beasley with us. She's the social director at Iris Worldwide. She works on loads of really exciting creative media campaigns, works with influencers, brings people in who've got amazing social followings to help work with brands. So she's going to be talking a little bit about that. Paul, I'm going to come to you first. Today's all about building up your own personal profile. And you see a lot of job applications come through Microsoft. What today is important other than the grades you got at school? What do you look for?
Sure, I kind of think, the grades you get at school is kind of a little bit important, but it's only a small kind of piece of the jigsaw. So, and with CVs, we get just hundreds of CVs, but it's really hard to kind of differentiate people just based on 2 bits of paper. So we tend to look at people's online profiles a lot to kind of see what they're about and what they're saying. So I don't know if that's surprising or not, but when we get a CV in, we will look at people and what their LinkedIn profile is. That's probably the first place we will go. That's really important, and I'm really happy to share some tips about the best practices and how you should use LinkedIn. I'd also look at Twitter as well, and what are people saying on Twitter? What do they have an opinion about? Because you start to get to know someone a little bit more. I do know some people that go as far as looking at Facebook. I don't do that because I don't know. I think that's a little bit intrusive, but certainly LinkedIn and Twitter would be the first place that I would go when I'm kind of reviewing candidates.
So with our Twitter account, if you go back far enough on mine, you'll probably find some embarrassing tweets. Is it that you're digging for stuff, or is it you're just trying to get a sense of the person? And what's some positive things that you would look for on someone's Twitter profile?
Yeah, definitely not digging for stuff. That's not kind of what I'm about. It's more about trying to get a sense of that individual. What are they interested in? So I work in the field of marketing and advertising. So I'm looking for people who are interested in that, and they're commenting on stuff, and they've got an opinion about it. Because Twitter and LinkedIn are brilliant platforms to do that, to have a presence and to build your own personal profile. So I'll look for people that are actively using those platforms and commenting on it and using it as a platform for themselves. Because the worst thing is when you get a CV and someone looks really great, and then you go and check them out on LinkedIn and Twitter, and they're just not there, and they're nowhere. Because that says to me that individual doesn't really care enough about their brand and their career. And for a career in branding and marketing and advertising, it's so important.
So do you think, I guess most people in the room will have personal social media profiles. If those are public and not locked down, how important is it to always present yourself as a professional person and consider the career path you might want to go down? Is it okay to be sharing pictures of you out with your friends alongside that, or is it very important to sort of keep it worky?
I think my view on that is each social media platform is slightly different, and they kind of have their own norms and rules. I think it's good for people to kind of show a bit of their personality. And so, yeah, I kind of do look for that, because someone who's just really boring and they're just talking professional stuff all the way through, you kind of get a sense maybe they don't have much more interest than that. And so, yeah, definitely a bit of personality, but it's kind of shouldn't go as far as, I got totally smashed last night in the pub and here's my mates being sick. That sort of thing is really going to turn me off. But certainly people that show a bit of their personality and their kind of interest in their hobbies and their passions, that's really interesting.
Alex, so for you, how did it begin? When did you decide you wanted to start a blog?
It's almost probably 5 years this year, in January. And it kind of never started from the point where I wanted a business, I wanted a brand, I wanted to work for myself. The main reason I was working full time at the time. I just really thought there was a gap in the market for someone doing what I wanted to do. Everyone was, talking about this amazing Gucci handbag they got, and these Chanel shoes, and Celine bag, and I thought, I just felt like it was making people not feel great about themselves. And I thought, why can't there be someone that is fashionable and works in the industry, but also wears high street, and actually everything's attainable? So I did that, and so it kind of grew from a passion. And I just wanted to tell people, I've got these amazing shoes from New Look, and they're £25, and you can buy them now. And I think that kind of passion and sort of authenticity that came from that is how it kind of grew as a business slowly. But I think it always started with a passion and wanting to tell someone something that I wanted to say, and not just, I've seen other people getting free handbags and I want to do this. And I think that's what's really important in the blogging world and the social media world. Make sure you have a voice first, and then, and then people will support you, because if you're creating good content, then people will just read it. And I think, and that's where you grow your audience, and that's when you can work with brands, because you've got an audience there that care.
I think a lot of bloggers that I come across, it's a sort of tendency to go broad with it. Do you think it's important to find your niche?
I think in today's era, I think definitely. I think at the start, blogging was so new, about kind of 6-7 years ago, so everyone just kind of covered anything and everything, and whereas now, I think you can see it even in kind of print magazines as well. There's a lot more kind of niche magazines that suit certain styles and lifestyles, and I think that's kind of quite important in setting yourself apart, because if you're trying to be everything to everyone, then I feel like you're never going to please everyone. Whereas I think if you've got a really important, sort of stance and care about what you're talking about, and you can be, your own expert in that field and then own it, and I think that's really sets you apart from other people. So I think it's really important.
And Hannah, you work with a lot of brands who are looking to reach out to people, and influencers, it's a word that's used a lot these days, but what sort of things do you look for in, like, what do brands want when they're sort of reaching out to people like Alex or bloggers?
So there's normally 2 reasons why a brand would want to work with an influencer. And that word is quite it's quite fluffy. But generally they want to reach their audience with a bit of authenticity, or they want to access their kind of skills. So we are increasingly moving away from just the influencers with the massive followings, like you're saying. So it's less about being everything to everybody, and more about, so if I'm, say, a pizza brand and I want to launch a new range which is more high-end, can I go to someone who's all about impressive food styling and use their skills as well as their audience to help me get my message across? So that's the way we're kind of thinking about it, and we're going to more micro-influencers, as we call them. Sorry, it's like buzzword bingo. But because we find that the massive influencers, your huge YouTubers, they have the huge reach, but they don't always have the engagement levels we want to be achieving. Whereas if you go with someone who's a lot more niche and specialised in what they do, they have a lot more of a kind of one-to-one relationship with their audiences, and we find that really, really valuable. So I'd say if you find your voice and you're really sort of focused on what you're talking about and you can build an audience that way, don't worry about going for massive numbers, because quite a lot of the time brands will just want to help. They just want help getting people to understand what they've got to say. So if you can understand what your audience want and you can help the brand access your audience in that way, that's super helpful, and that's more and more what we're getting asked.
And you're talking about people finding specific skill sets. Are those skill sets that traditionally media companies or a pizza company wouldn't have already in the building? Are you looking for sort of new, different skill sets?
Sometimes we don't really know what we're looking for until we find it. And increasingly, we're trying to kind of reach out to probably people like all you guys who are making stuff, doing stuff like out there and just getting on with it. And you get the platforms, people know how to create for their platforms and for their audience. Whereas somebody like, I don't know, unnamed bank client might not know how to make content for Snapchat. So that's what we mean by skill sets, is there's all these new platforms coming up, and you actually have to be you have to know what you're doing in order to get any kind of traction there. And if people are just doing that anyway for fun or for a passion, they've got that skill already, so you don't have to start from scratch as a brand with not really knowing what you're doing. So you get a kind of head start by working with people who know what they're doing.
And Paul, what if there are people here today who they know a lot about social media, but because they use it, how do you take that to the next level and start to become an employable person who could have a career in social or marketing?
Yeah, so building on what the other guys have said, it's about knowing what you want to stand for. That's the start point. So it's really important to have a presence online and build your brand, but it's about being unique and having something that you want to be known for. So for example, all the stuff that I tend to publish and tweet and like is about creativity and kind of art and creativity in business, because that's my thing, that's what I'm really passionate about. A colleague of mine talks about well-being in work, and his thing is about healthy body, healthy mind. In fact, he did a post recently about the importance of sleep, the importance of getting good sleep so you're really fit for kind of the next day at work. Unintentionally, he called it "Sleep Your Way to the Top." Don't think he meant to, but he got a hell of a lot of traffic. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but you could try it. So I think it's about understanding what it is that you want to be known for, and that's often the hardest thing. So once you can identify that, it's then everything else kind of flows, because you've then got a framework to think about, what am I going to tweet? What am I going to post? What's the stuff that I should be liking? It should be true to the brands that you want to be. And that's very personal, depending on you as an individual and the career that you're seeking out.
And I think the trouble is a lot of people don't know yet. So how do you start to refine that? Alex, for you, it was a spark of an idea, and then do you...
Yeah, I didn't think that. I suppose it came from kind of a few years. I mean, I was 28 when I set up my blog, so I definitely, wasn't ahead of anyone in that sense. And it came from a few just friends and work colleagues being like, I can't believe that's only from Topshop, and I can't believe you always find the best bits on the high street. Can you take me shopping? And I think that's the skill that I wouldn't even consider a skill. I just thought, it's shopping, it's really easy, I don't understand. You just go to a shop. And you realise that actually it is a skill, and we've all got these kind of personal skills that we kind of aren't really tapping into, and they're kind of in you, and I think that's really important. So I think do listen to what people are saying and thinking, well, maybe that's something that I can offer actually, and really kind of use that to your advantage. And I think that kind of niche does really help, because I do get approached by I get approached by mid-market brands, but I get approached even by designer brands, or even sometimes, I mean, it sounds crazy, but offered to be taken away on a press trip. But I look at the itinerary, and it's too expensive, it's too luxe for my brand. My brand's all more about kind of a bit more boutique-y, kind of tailored kind of trip, and kind of where I would stay if I was spending the money. And if I can't afford to stay in the Four Seasons, I'm not going to stay there because it's free. And I think that integrity and that kind of knowing what your brand is and what works for your reader, and they're not going to get anything out of me being on a yacht for a week. You can kind of really, kind of tailor that and understand your audience, and that's where it kind of, success, I think, comes from.
I think you touched on it earlier, but there is this perception that blogging, vlogging is just being showered with gifts all the time, and I suppose the danger is people will get into it with that in mind, but the focus should be on it as a business rather than...
Yeah, I suppose fashion and beauty, historically has been that kind of, this sort of a generous industry. I mean, it's mainly, in the old days, it's not very well paid industry. So it used to kind of, there's lots of gifts from brands, and you have to really, firstly, it does not come straight away. I'd like to say you have to work for years, and then brands kind of start kind of pursuing you to work with you. But I think actually, if you really care about what you're doing, that doesn't matter. To be honest, I actually buy my clothes. I'm not really interested in free gifts, because if I buy it, then actually all the blog posts that I do about the item that I'm wearing always does better, because people know that I've bought it, I've spent the money, and it's too transparent. And I think it's really important to remain, keep your integrity. And you if you are successful in your field, you do get offered things, and it is really amazing. And you have to always kind of keep your head and think, is this right for me? Is this right for my brand? And I think, yeah, there's a lot of sort of, positive sides to blogging, but there's a lot of negative connotations as well. And I don't think, there's a lot of people as well in the industry, some bloggers are known as being a bit more sort of, I suppose, after the freebies. And I think you have to be very aware of being that person as well. So you have to kind of remain really professional with it and really, really think while you're doing it.
Hannah, you do social media for a number of different brands, and there are so many platforms now. How do you know, if you were approaching this as building up your own brand, how do you decide where to place your efforts and spend your time? And is it okay to just be an expert at Instagram? Like, do you work with people who have very specific skill sets like that?
So there's kind of two questions there.
Yeah.
I think the first one, what platform to use? So that, if we're thinking about it from a brand strategy, that's the first question we'll ask. And the way we approach it is, well, where are your audience? So by talking to people and finding out if I'm an employer, where am I going first? LinkedIn is obviously a great example. Make sure your LinkedIn is on point. If you want to post drunk selfies, probably put them on Snapchat because they disappear. So just think about who's going to be accessing you, where are they probably going to go, what's private, what's public, and then work at it from that kind of point of view. And the second bit?
The second bit was how...
Is it okay to be specialist?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's fine to be specialist because so many brands, they see that social's really important for them, and they see that their audience is there, and they know they need to be on it, but they don't really know what to do once they get there. And luckily they don't, otherwise I wouldn't have a job. But if we can connect them with people who are really expert in their field, then that kind of benefits both of us, because if there's a fashion brand who want to, for example, access your expertise, we can partner them up. And if you're nailing it on Snapchat and the brand has no idea about Snapchat, you both bring something to the party and it becomes a really nice symbiotic relationship. So I think it's fine. As long as, I think the key thing is to, like you were saying, just being good on Instagram is not the complete picture. You need to understand how businesses work and think about not just what you want to do, but what businesses might need of you and how you could help them out. So that, I think, is the most interesting way of thinking about it. Quite a lot of the time, if we have young people come in, they're quite kind of X-factory sometimes, like, I'm really passionate, I love doing this, I love doing that. I'm like, yeah, but are you actually good at it, and how can that help me? So thinking about what you want to do is really important, and having a passion obviously is really key, but also thinking about it from an employability point of view. What can you bring to a business? What makes you special to everybody else in the room is really important to kind of understand when you're thinking about positioning yourself and your personal branding.
And to all of you, really, what are those things? What does make someone stand out particularly? I mean, I'm guessing it's not just volume of followers.
For me, and I hate this word, but it's proactivity and being positive and just getting out there. It's a really hard thing to give advice on because it doesn't feel very actionable. Like, everyone tells you, just get out there and meet people and do this and be really present. But actually, what does that mean? Like, what can I sit down and do tomorrow that will make me present? So just think about what you actually can do. So social media gives you massive, massive scope. You can message people on LinkedIn. You can just be posting about stuff. You can be building up what your personality is and what you're interested in. You can read around the subject. You can bring your perspective to conversations. And just doing that continuously is going to help you really build who you are and help get you noticed, I think.
I think building on that, I think having a go is the most important thing, and getting started, because that's often the hardest thing to do. It's like, it can feel quite overwhelming. Where on earth do I start? I think having a go and getting started is really important. Understanding what it is that you want to be known for, what do you want your online brand to be, is the next most important thing. You've both talked about commitment and dedication and hard work, and it is. It's not a case of, oh, I'll just like a few things and put a few posts on LinkedIn. It's about the hard work behind that to kind of keep doing it and building it into your daily routine so it comes quite natural. So I now make sure that I go into LinkedIn twice a day. It's just become natural to me, but I had to kind of force myself into that routine and that habit. And then the last thing for me is, it kind of becomes self-fulfilling, and this is the slightly magical bit. So I talk a lot about art and creativity in business. Because of that, you found me and said, do you want to come and talk today at this? I said, yeah, I'd be really delighted to. Because of that, I'm now tweeting about this. So it just becomes self-fulfilling. You kind of it all starts to kind of come together. But it takes a bit of time, but I think the best advice I can give is just have a go. That's the most important thing, is just get started and have a go.
I think putting yourself out there is really important, I think. And we were saying about self-fulfilling as well. Like, this month I've done quite a few talks, and I'm doing some more later on in the month. And I think that's because, you're tweeting that you're there, and then other brands see that and think, because then NME will retweet this, and they'll say, oh, they're working with them. Maybe I need to know about that person. And then, I think that sort of engagement, interaction really helps. Being part of something, using those hashtags as well, so that people can see, you're getting yourself out there. You're at this NME event, and you're doing this, and you're doing that. And I think, I actually have to say I go to a lot of work events, and I always have done, always through my career. And it involves working a few evenings a week. But when I went to start on my own and be freelance, all the brands, I used to go to all their events, even if they were, a bit of schlep uptown. I would make sure I go, because I thought that girl's really nice and she supported me. And when I went to go freelance, those brands, didn't hesitate to support me, because they were like, you would always come to our events, and you'd always show up, and you'd always, try and help us where you could, and, understand how the industry works. And it is a bit, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. There's a lot of give and take. And I think that's really important about getting out there.
Another thing which I think is really important is no one's looking to hire you. And that sounds really harsh, but you kind of think, oh, but I really want this, and I'm really good at it. But no one is going to come and find you unless you're putting yourself in front of them. So, like you say, no one knew that you wanted to do talks until you started doing them and started tweeting about it, and letting people know that you were up for it and you were getting involved. So it's very much front of mind. People are so busy, they've got businesses to run, they're senior management, they're super busy. If you're helping them out and showing them that you're keen, if you're a creative, bring your book in, try and get coffees in with people, tweet people stuff that you've been doing, have an opinion, that's really going to help. Because when jobs do come up, you'll go, oh, well, there's that girl who keeps coming in and showing me all her work. So it's just about, because you're always going to hire someone you've met and had a coffee with over someone who's just sent you a CV cold.
That's so true, and particularly on LinkedIn, it's so easy to do it, because if I don't know, if there's someone where you really want to go and work, just follow that company, then you'll get all their updates in your group. So, and if there's someone particular, maybe a hiring manager that you think, right, that's the person, it's their team that I want to go and work it, just start commenting on what they're talking about, and pretty soon they'll be like, who is this person? And then you've got an introduction, and that's how things happen.
Yeah, and I think on LinkedIn it's a bit more, it's more comfortable doing it on LinkedIn because everyone's there. It's basically a self-serving platform. Whereas if you started Facebook messaging me all the time, I'd be like, ugh, who are you?
It's okay.
Twitter's a bit,
Because you send that out into the public, so you expect the public to reply.
But LinkedIn's very much I'm interested in this, and you can have a more of a business conversation.
I'd also like to say as well, don't be afraid to let your personality, I think we're all talking about a brand, but I think don't be afraid to let your personality shine, because I think that is what sets people apart as well. If people are enjoying what you're saying and you're almost a little bit lighthearted and you kind of talk to people like they're your friend, I think, all of my content, whenever I send it blog, it's never blogged this skirt, it's the skirt that you never knew you wanted, or, the skirt of our dreams, or things like that, and just kind of being a bit more chatty. And I think recently as well, with the rise of Snapchat and Instagram stories, a lot of these girls, guys, and, they've got this kind of really creative, beautifully, to look at feed. But then you go on Instagram stories and they don't have anything to say. And I think sometimes that's quite nice. If you've got a really, vibrant personality, let it show, because people connect a bit more with that, I think.
Yeah, that also stands for when you're trying to get a job in a company, because at the end of the day, I've got to work with you. So I've got to know that you're all right, because we're going to have to work together every day. So yeah, I think the personality thing is really important.
Cool. I think we'll open it up to some questions now. If anyone's got anything specific they'd like to ask. Yeah, in the middle there. Oh yeah, sorry. So, can maybe just shout.
Hi, I'm Clifford. In terms of everything you said, I really appreciate it and took it on board. But I've got a question in relation to, it's kind of twofold. So in dealing with brands and companies, and then also in dealing with, say, peers and
your audience. As a brand, how do you protect yourself in terms of not kind of being exploited? So, for example, like Jamal said, with some of his posts, he would say where he was, and then people would kind of turn up. And as much as you want to kind of have that connection, you don't want to kind of give too much to the point where it's kind of invading your own personal life, like you said, with the Facebook. And then also with brands, how do you kind of show them that you're interested, but don't end up kind of going in there and then just doing all of the hard work, but then not actually getting anything viable that you can take away from it? Because I feel like as creatives as well, sometimes when we're young and we're very vibrant and passionate, we do put a lot of our efforts into it. And because there's not like a specific job that we necessarily know, we'd come in, do all this work, and then it's kind of like, well, thanks. And then you just got like another post in your like work experience, but not an actual job from it.
Yeah, that's really hard actually, because I think it depends, and sometimes you won't know until you start working with a brand or a company. You've just got to, it's like we said, like staying true to yourself and knowing what your boundaries are. Because I think what I don't want to say is just don't do anything unless there's a job at the end, because you need to be open to things, because you don't know where anything is going to lead. Like, I didn't know where I'd end up, I just kind of went with what came up and I've ended up where I am. But I think as long as you know where your boundaries are, like set yourself what's realistic, what can I realistically do for, like how long could I work for free, and then what's my kind of boundary, and try and set that out from the beginning so everyone knows where they are. I mean, if you're working with a good company, they should work with you.
Sometimes like you've got like a really good brand that you're really into,
Yeah.
and so you don't want to be saying no to them, and
I know.
whilst you've still got another job that you have to balance.
Yeah, you've probably got.
I'm not going to lie, it still happens. I'm 33 and I still, people still expect me to work for free, and it is, again, I mean, especially in the fashion industry, I mean, obviously in the creative industry in general, I think there is a bit of, there's a lot of give and take, and I often do things for free in exchange for, not exchange for, but, for exposure, and, I do a lot of work on my blog is editorial. I don't make money from it. But I think as long as you know the bigger picture is there, I did a lot of unpaid work experience, from sort of 17 to 21. I did it in all my kind of school holidays, and I remember my friend at the time who I lived with was like, "Isn't it about time you got a paid job? Like, what's this?" And I was like, "Oh, I know, but it is the industry," and I think, unfortunately, it does exploit a few people. And I mean, there are times when I thought, God, they've managed to get away with me doing, 3 days extra work there. But I do think you have to understand the end goal, and then hopefully you get to a point where you do understand, and you can actually then educate the brand. And there are a lot of people that some plead ignorance, and some actually are ignorant. And some people say to me like, "Oh, well, you do this, and can you come for the day and style a shoot and do this?" And I think, well, no, I'm a stylist, so that's my job. I don't do that for free. And I think you have to say, unfortunately, this is my expertise and this is a paid project. I understand if it's, and I think, unfortunately, you still have to go through that stage of doing a lot of unpaid stuff to get to that point. But I think when the time has come, I think, because again, it's that setting yourself a time limit. Do you know what? I've done this for, a year now, this is what I need to do, and I need to tell them. And I think it is being strong, but do it in a really professional and polite way. I hope you understand this is my expertise and I would be charging for this, or and I think that's from a freelance perspective anyway, not in the sense of like a job, but I think it's a really tough one. I think only you kind of know yourself.
I think, to reassure you, I don't see very much of it, so I don't want you to be worried about it, because I don't think it's a massive problem.
It's just going to keep happening.
But I think my advice would be, approach kind of every meeting, every opportunity, an event like this today. You're going to meet a ton of people at every one of them, and then it's just about those connections that you make. That might lead to the next thing, that leads to the next thing. And I think it's having an open mind to all that stuff and approaching it with positivity and thinking, do you know what? I don't know what's going to come out today, but I'm going to meet a bunch of really fascinating people, and that's going to be great.
I think it might also be helpful to kind of do a bit of research into what your market rate would be. So there's lots of, I don't know what your particular talent is, but there's lots of agencies around. So if we're working for a brand looking for some talent, we'll look, so say we're looking for an Instagrammer, we'll do a bit of research on Instagram, but we'll also go to like picture agencies, and they'll say this is the rate that we charge. So if you can get a few quotes from around the same industry as you, you'll at least know what's realistic. And then you can go to brands and say, I'm happy to do a kind of test phase, but then if we want to go ahead with it, the next 3 pictures will be X. And then you both know and you sound more professional because you know what you're talking about and you've done a bit of research and you know what your rate is. So that's probably a good thing to do as well, just chat to a few agencies if that's relevant to what you do.
Cool. That's good advice. Thanks. Yeah, in the front here. Thanks.
I guess you can hear me.
Yeah, yeah.
When you got your first job, where you knew I'm doing it right now, so that because you freelance, there was a point where you're like, oh, I'm doing it right now. How did you keep yourself motivated?
In freelance in particular.
All of you, like when you reach that job where you're like, okay, I'm doing it right now. I'm where I've not reached my goal, but I'm happy now. How do you keep yourself motivated?
I don't think you ever can think, well, I'm done. If you think you're done, you probably won't be motivated. So I think you always, someone once said to me, think about what the job is you want after your next job. So if you're always thinking like slightly further ahead, then it helps you think about what your next steps might be and what you're working towards. But also on a kind of shorter term plan, chat to your team, what's going on that week, what's exciting for you, and what can you get involved with that's going to keep you wanting to come into work.
I think there's a phrase that I really like, which is every day is a school day. So Charlotte really kindly said I had 20 years experience, thank you for that, which made me feel really old. But I still treat every day, I kind of learn something new, and that's what really motivates me and excites me. There's a stat that I read a couple of weeks ago that said over 60% of students in college and university today will end up doing jobs that just don't exist currently. I thought that was fascinating and really exciting. So that motivates me because the world's moving really quickly and there are tons of opportunities. So for me, it's about learning and absorbing stuff.
Yeah, I also think, when I used to always want to be a fashion editor, and that was like my goal in life. And then I got to be a fashion editor and I left to do blogging. And I thought, oh, is this my dream job? And it's because that job didn't exist. And I think because of the way, sort of, especially social media and the sort of e-world is evolving, I think, you don't know what's coming next. And I think I never ever think that I'm doing work. I just know I've got things to do. So I never ever think that I've got a job. I've just got to get stuff done because I've got to do it, and that's it. But I enjoy it, and I just want to get to all those kind of hurdles. And I think if you find the right career for you, I think you won't really have any struggle with motivation.
Yeah, because new goals come up all the time. So it might be with us, it might be there's a new pitch in, and suddenly you were kind of working on this, but all of a sudden there's a new brand come in and you have to start from scratch all over again, and you get put with a new team, and it constantly changes. And if you let the place where you're working know that you're always up for new challenges, you'll get new stuff thrown your way. So just, and work out what motivates you as well. Like some people, I love getting praise. So
Doesn't everyone?
Yeah, it doesn't everyone. But some people, it's just money. Some people just want to be part of a team. So working out what actually excites you is quite important as well, because then you can make sure that you're going for opportunities that come up like that.
Can I be cheeky to ask another question?
Yeah. We've got 10 minutes, great.
What do you say to a company that says you're overqualified?
I've never been overqualified.
I don't think
I have.
Lucky you.
I would take
probably
it as
not.
a compliment.
Yeah, take it as a
Yeah,
compliment,
and
but
then
maybe move on
have
somewhere else.
have a look at another job that that actually I have not overqualified, but they knew that I could have done it better, and actually it did work out. So I actually think it's a compliment and think, maybe I am destined for something
maybe
bigger.
You're pitching yourself too low.
Yeah.
Aim higher.
Cool. Yeah, over there, thanks.
Hiya. I just had a question, kind of two questions actually. The first one is, where do you get the time for self-branding? And the second question is, both Hannah and Paul have spoken about LinkedIn, and that's the first place that you guys go to when you're employing. What are you looking for exactly on LinkedIn? Is it interaction? Is it the number of connections? What exactly is that?
Okay. Shall I start with that? How do I build it into my day? I've had to work really hard at that, if I'm really honest. because it didn't come naturally. And what I now do, I have certain times of day when I kind of go into LinkedIn and do that stuff. It's kind of on the train into work and on the train out of work. It's kind of as simple as that, and that's my time to go and do that stuff. And if I've got time, I might do a little bit at lunchtime as well. But I now I've just built it into my day. It's kind of, I call it muscle memory. It's just kind of learning it and through repetition till it just becomes normal. And then the second question was about what do we look for on LinkedIn? It's not about volume of connections. It's more about people who've got something to say. So in my profession, which is marketing and advertising, I'm interested in people who might be commenting on news in the industry. They might put a post on about, what do they think about social media, what do they think about ad blocking, or kind of stuff that we're worrying about every day. So it's people with an opinion and they're not afraid to say it. It almost doesn't matter if they're right or wrong. It's the fact that they're brave enough and they're committed enough to themselves and their career to kind of stand up and do that. And it does honestly make people stand out from the crowd. From a pile of CVs, if you see someone doing that, I want to go and meet that person.
Yeah, I think that's answered it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, back there. Thanks.
It's just about what you were saying about going on Twitter and stuff. And you're saying you don't really want to see like the drunk like pics and stuff. But also like, how do you feel about people being very like politically opinionated? Like, do you kind of accidentally maybe let your own personal political views kind of get in the way of that, or like not on purpose obviously, but like and like, do you like people that are very kind of politically opinionated, or like kind of that kind of thing?
Everyone's looking at me. From my perspective, it's really tricky territory, if I'm honest. It's not, I don't want people to feel, gosh, I have to suppress my personality in terms of my online brand and what I want to be known for. But it's thinking about the career that you're seeking and the industry that you want to go in, how that will be seen. Mm-hmm. I'll give you one example. We had a real issue last year where someone who doesn't actually work in our company but works in a related company started tweeting their views about the war on Afghanistan. It was really tough because it was associated then with us as a brand, and that's where it gets really tricky. Because as a brand, we can't really have a political view. That's not really what we're about. So that's where that stuff kind of verges into tricky territory. So honestly, I think it's hard, but it's very dependent on where you want to go and the career you want, because in some careers, that's going to be really helpful to you.
Yeah.
Something like journalism, brilliant.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think from an influencer perspective, I'm probably one of the few people that doesn't talk about politics. I think a few people asked me to kind of make a stance on Brexit on my social media channels, and I decided to be apolitical, but also in the sense that I'm also not that personal. I don't put pictures of my family on my Instagram. I don't put pictures of my nephew, because my Instagram is about fashion and lifestyle, and I don't feel like it's my place in the sort of in my sort of world to be telling people, influencing people in that way, in political ways. But there are a few influencers who, are saying their opinions, and, but also I think you can do it if they've done it in an intelligent way. But I think it's because if you're a personal brand and it is just you and you're not speaking for a big company, I think you can just decide to do it. But I think really think about whether, is it right for your brand? My brand is talking about affordable fashion. Is it right to be talking about the election in America? It's probably not. And I think really think about it before you do it, so kind of either on one side of the fence or you're not, in my opinion.
I think that's covered.
Any more? In the middle there.
Hiya. Going back to LinkedIn and everything, you were talking, Paul, about connecting with like hiring managers and that kind of thing. Is there some kind of etiquette in terms of connecting with people that you've maybe not met face to face? And also, in terms of posting stuff regularly on LinkedIn, I am connected with people that I currently work with. Should I worry that then they're going to see that I'm looking elsewhere or not? I don't know.
So on worrying about if people are going to see what you're doing, there is a new, don't worry, Nikki, I'm not looking. There's a new option on LinkedIn to let people know that you're looking without anyone you work with knowing. So I think as long as you're not posting, I'm looking for a job, hire me, you should be fine. It's more about showing you've got an opinion on the industry that you're looking to go into, and I think your current employer will appreciate that as well. So I wouldn't worry too much about looking like you're being overly enthusiastic to get a new job. I think it's just part of using LinkedIn well. And with regards to getting in touch with people you haven't met, lots of people get in touch with me, and there's varying ways to do it, and I'm sure you'll have an opinion on this as well. But generally, if people give me a little bit of chat, tell me why they've got in touch with me, either they've seen me at a talk or they like a campaign that I've worked on, rather than just, can you get me a job at Iris? That tends to go down a bit better. If you can say why you want to connect with me and chat with me, that's always going to go down better than just get me a job.
I think direct approaches are kind of good though, but I think positioning it in what's the value going to be to the audience that you're speaking to is really important. I'll give you one very personal example. So I did this. I wanted to go and work with this organisation that I was really passionate about. So I used LinkedIn to find out, who would I need to speak to there, and sent them a direct message. And I said, look, we've never met, but I really like what you do. I think I can help you. I'm good at this, this, and this. Can I take you for a coffee? And he was like, wow, amazing. And he's now kind of become a bit of a friend, and I saw him this week, and he was even joking about it, about going, oh, I can't believe you sent me that message out of the blue. But it's genuine, and it does work, because it shows that people have got a bit of self-confidence, and they're thinking about what's the value to that person. And clearly he thought it would be valuable to meet me, so that was kind of helpful, and off we went.
That's good tips. Yeah. Okay, one more, just there, yeah, thanks.
Hi, I just wanted to ask a question about freelancing, and do you have any tips about how to become a successful freelancer in the creative industry?
I suppose that's me. Do you know, when I went freelance, everyone asked me if I was scared, and I have to say I never was, mainly because I know that I work 100% at everything I do, and I really give it all my all, and I really am passionate about, and I really care, probably sometimes too much, but I really do, and I think that's always helped me as a freelancer, because I know that every person that I've ever worked for, they book me again, because I always kind of, am really sort of, I want to do it, I've got the energy, I've got the, enthusiasm, I'm kind of not really a no person, I'm very like, everything's possible, everything can be worked out, I'm a problem solver, and I think everyone, an employer really appreciates that, even if sometimes I'm not very good at maths, and I'm terrible at doing expenses or adding up anything. I can't even do it on a calculator, but I will get there, and I will do it, and I'll do it with enthusiasm, and nothing's a problem. And I think if you've got that sort of mentality towards every job that you do, I think that will always succeed in freelance. And I think putting yourself out there. I would email, not blanket email, but I would definitely email sort of from scratch someone I've never met before and say, this is my experience. Also make it really easy for them. Obviously, I'm a stylist, so I would already put in a PDF of work that I've done recently, so that they don't have to say, well, what have you done? It's here. If you want here, my link to my blog's here. This is a PDF of some work I've done recently. I've worked here and here, and just kind of, not attach a CV, but basically just give a bit of a rough, basically again, like what you can offer that brand. And I think just approach it in that, don't be scared to email people. If they don't reply, they don't reply. They might do, and, that's a step in the door. And I think, and that's the thing, I suppose, is confidence and, knowing that you can do it is the most important thing, I think, about freelance.
I'd probably add to that, actually, from an NME perspective, we work with a lot of freelancers. People pitch us ideas, and I get a lot of emails of like, oh, I'd be interested in working for you, but the ones that stand out are people that pitch with an idea and a headline and a suggestion of what the piece is that they could write for us, and again, with examples of their work. And I work with a lot of people who've made really long, successful careers out of freelancing, and they always say that just say yes to everything when you're starting out, and even if it's writing something that is not the dream place that you'd like to work for, just get experience and take opportunities, and just be proactive in seeking out work as well. Cool. Thank you very much to all of our speakers. I think it was a really good session.